Thousands rallied in central Moscow on Saturday to call on President Vladimir Putin not to stay in power indefinitely, in the first major protest by the Russian opposition since the Kremlin chief announced controversial plans to change the constitution.
Here's a summary of the article.
Thousands rallied in central Moscow on Saturday to call on President Vladimir Putin not to stay in power indefinitely, in the first major protest by the Russian opposition since the Kremlin chief announced controversial plans to change the constitution. The rally marked 5 years since the assassination of opposition politician Boris Nemtsov, but its organizers also want the event to send a message to Putin after he proposed major constitutional changes. Organizers, including the country's most prominent opposition leader Alexei Navalny, called for a mass turnout to show Putin that he must not consider staying in power by any means when his current mandate ends in 2024. Russia without Putin, the crowds chanted repeatedly as they began marching. Putin, who has dominated Russia for 2 decades, in January unleashed a political storm, proposing an overhaul of the constitution, the first changes to the basic law since 1993. Analysts see the plan as beginning preparations for succession when Putin's fourth presidential term ends in 2024, while the opposition says the Kremlin strongman wants to remain leader for life. Putin first came to power as prime minister in 1999 under Boris Yeltsin before becoming president in 2000.
This post received a score of 55,239, with an upvote ratio of 95%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
And Putin answers, "Sure, I am not going to be in power indefinitely, only until the day I die, and not a single minute more."
Then Putin rolled up his sleeve and showed a tattoo of Putin with his shirt off and said,
"Suka Blyat," and then he puts on an Aztec vampire stone mask.
Then he rushes B with his stand.
Ora 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 suka 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 suka.
Za manifesto. His stand name? Kremlin killer.
His reputation? Ruthless.
Cheeky. Breaky.
EUROBEATS intensify.
Damn, how long are these people in power for?
I believe they have term limits of 2 4-year terms in a row, but once they leave and someone else takes over for a 4-year term that counter-resets. I believe that happened a few years ago and now they're back to Putin.
Yes, Medvedev.
While Putin was prime minister. Yeah, that was legit.
A democratic Russia would be really good the world tbh.
It will take at least 1 generation after leadership change. The nice thing is young PPL in Russia are expecting it.
I think it took a bit, but the internet is slowly bringing education about these topics to people who would otherwise be completely lost and propagandized.
This is true, but I think the clock is ticking. The more time the government has to learn the internet, the more time they have to block as many methods of outside communication as possible. The internet is good for learning, in turn it is also good for propaganda.
I don't know how this is possible, when in other First World Western European and American democracies, thanks in no small part to the huge amount of backdoor influence shown by the Russians, people are becoming more susceptible to outright fascist authoritarian lies and propaganda. How fascinating. What is it the Russians are doing that the rest of us suffering from Russia-backed propaganda psyops aren't? Edit, I meant to reply to the guy above you, oh tier XQ, I actually agree with you that the government will use the internet to oppress.
A big difference is that in America and other democracies, the media is viewed as neutral when it actually isn't. A lot of faith is put into them, and people tend to believe what is said because they don't understand why they would lie. In Russia, nobody actually trusts the media because they understand it is state-run, and they completely understand why they would lie.
Answer right here. Also damn if American average critical thinking skills are down the toilet. Greater than also damn if American average critical thinking skills are down the toilet. It's not just American critical thinking skills, we've got a serious problem with that in the UK, and it's just getting worse and worse.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.